feature presentation.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 121 of the Untitled Movie Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Sorry, I was just looking at the Zencaster recording, and it like delayed for like I think 3 to 5 seconds before it started recording on my end. So I just wanted to give you the heads up.
Oh, no, it's okay. Do you want me to redo the intro or do a
No,
new one?
no.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
I think people need to know the truth about Zencaster.
I'm sure on my end it will fuck everything up and I'll have to resync everything, or that's why I always wait a little bit. Like, you guys
Right.
don't know this because I edit them and you see me start it right when we're supposed to start, but a little inside baseball of editing. If anyone's ever editing something, you give yourself a little leeway at the beginning because you need to make sure everything is you don't cut yourself off. Eric, how are you?
it's it's a loaded question because if anybody watched the interview or listened to the interview with Jay Cheel for Cursed Films 2, I was starting to feel really sick the morning of that interview, and so I did a COVID test and tested positive. A family member got me sick. It wasn't due to going out anywhere or doing anything without a mask off or what have you. It
No,
was
yeah, it's all
no, I
good.
know. I just want to make sure that I make that perfectly clear. And so
Well, you've been extremely extra cautious throughout this
Oh,
whole thing, so,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's also
um
partly because I've been helping my grandparents who are,
yeah, of
in
course,
their
yeah.
late 80s and early 90s, and so like you become more hyper aware of everything that you touch and everything that you do, and trying to keep your hands washed, double mask, carry hand sanitizer, and minimize the risk. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get it still. Obviously,
Yeah.
this most recent variant that we've had has been apparently the most contagious. And so for the last week or so, the long weekend before the Easter weekend, going from that Thursday into it, I have literally just been bedridden for most of it. I'm starting to feel better. I'm eating solids again, and would just highly recommend that you still wear a mask wherever you go. If you do not have your boosters, get them. The fourth one
Yeah.
is starting to roll out. Be aware of when that is available to you in your age bracket, and get it. I have to wait now for 3 months after having COVID. So that's what I was talking to my doctor about it, and she was saying you need to wait so
Mhm.
I'll be able to get it in mid-July, even though it's not eligible to our age range yet. But
Probably not until then anyway, most likely,
yeah.
right? But who knows, but
So yeah, take care of yourself. COVID is very real.
well, take care of yourself. I'm glad you're feeling a bit better and better enough to do this, so I
I'm
really do
hydrating
appreciate that
on the
because
Mountain Dew.
the dew will cure all. It's the cure for COVID, Mountain Dew. I'm glad you're feeling better because that's why we've been off for a little while. Not specifically just that. I've also been very busy, with wedding stuff and just that Easter weekend. It was just this kind of perfect storm of, Eric getting COVID. I got really busy with wedding stuff that we just Eric did that interview. Thank you for doing that interview with Jay. It's fantastic. Everyone should go check it out. Jay, one of the best voices in the business. A great interview that you did with him.
Also,
Um,
since we're talking about him now, Cursed Films
yeah,
2 is on Shudder. The
yeah.
first three
First
episodes, as we're
three, yeah.
talking about Wizard
Stalker
of
just came
Oz,
out.
Rosemary's Baby, and Stalker. On top of that, J. Teal's first feature, Beauty Day, is now available on Blu-ray for
Beautiful.
the first time. Beautiful. It's a honey, that's for sure. And it's through Vinegar Syndrome. So I highly
Mhm.
recommend picking this up. It's got a ton of special features, audio commentaries, behind the
An
scenes.
underrated documentarian, because I feel like people obviously Beauty Day and both How to Build a Time Machine, small Canadian movies, right? Obviously Curse Film was a little bit bigger because Shudder's a big streaming service in the US and Canada, but still a guy that I think is completely low-key underrated. And like I love both Beauty Day and How to Build a Time Machine, and I'm not even a doc guy. You guys know that. But they're great. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're like, especially with Beauty Day, like if you're interested in like, you know, Jackass and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
this kind of predates all of that as well.
I
So
know. Yeah. Yeah.
check that
But I
out.
appreciate that that morning you found out. I know it was early, so you were still feeling better, like okay. But
I
I
was
appreciate
I
you
was
doing
feeling
that.
like when when I was talking to Jay, I felt like I had this headache coming on, and
Yeah.
like I was feeling really tired, and I was upfront with him in the interview. I was like, Jay,
Oh, I
like I
know.
just
Yeah. That's why I kept it in there, and like obviously it was right off the beginning. So, um, it was a great interview. So thank you for doing that. But yeah, that mixed with things we've been off for a little while, but we do have reviews up right now for, um, oh my God, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent and The Northman. So a little bit late on those, but those are both out now for you guys to listen to. So we are back, and we should be pretty consistent up until I get married. That will be an interesting time. We'll have to figure out. But we should be back to our regularly scheduled programming. And this should be a fun episode. We haven't recorded in a bit. I'm excited to talk to you. There's lots of stuff going on that we missed. We're going to talk about the Thor Love and Thunder trailer, the Crimes of Our Future trailer. We're going to talk about the Can lineup. We're going to talk about some stuff we've been streaming on TV. And I also wanted to kind of talk about I saw a tweet about Screen X pop up today, and it gave me the idea of maybe possibly we'll see on time ranking all of the different ways you can watch a movie, whether it's theatrically, mostly theatrically, or the couple ways you can watch it at home. And I thought that could be fun because some of them are great and some are horrible garbage gimmicks, and you should never go do them. Screen X.
yeah, and we're not at the stage yet where we can watch movies subconsciously. So
No. I got a great story. Remember the Ghostbusters Screen X thing too? We can tell that
Oh yeah,
story. I felt really bad about that, but
yeah.
that was just not my fault. But like,
No,
I
it's
was
still
very
yeah.
vocal about how much I did not enjoy Screen X, and there's a story to go with that. So we'll tell that in a bit. But Eric, I don't want to make this all about you having COVID, but at any moment, if you need to, just cough at the screen, and I'll know to kind of
I might lie down during the
cut the
podcast. So it's
Hey, that's fine. I might too. Where do you want to start? I mean, we can get right in. Like, we can do our normal thing of what you've been watching. We can start to talk about some of the stuff we've been streaming, or if you want to get into um, trailers, or this show, we make it up every episode of what order we do things. So, I'm down to do whatever you want.
well, I think we should talk TV first, Matt. I think we should start with the small screen and then build our way up to the big screen because two things that we've been watching. We both finished season 1 of Severance, which is now available on Apple TV Plus. All 9 episodes of season 1. And we also watched season 3, episode 1 of Barry, which
He's
just
back,
premiered.
baby.
He's bigger than ever and ready to shoot some people in the head, and then deal with it in a melancholy kind of way. Both of them. I mean, like Barry wasn't a hard sell. It was just that it had been some time since we had seen
2 years, right? Since
season 2, and where that ended and where characters ended up and where we were kind of reconnecting with them in season 3. But the show itself in that first episode of season 3 doesn't lose a step in terms of its tone being a very, very dark comedy with gallows humor throughout, and sort of the relationships and the dynamics, and sort of taking it into account that it's partly a behind the scenes Hollywood-esque story, but with a little bit of a hitman-esque element, very much prominent in Bill Hader's performance, and his creativity both in front of the camera, but on behind the scenes as a writer, as a director, and yeah, it had been 2 years almost now, or at least, and like watching it, it once you kind of get back into it again, it's like, oh yeah, now I remember why I loved it so much, and yeah, it feels like this season is just ready to roll.
Yeah, I'm absolutely there with you. I forgot it came back because something else came back recently
The cat came
too.
back.
I forget what it is. I'm sure I'll remember. But anyways, yeah, Barry randomly I'm like, "Oh shit, Barry. Oh, Better Call Saul. I can talk about that too." But anyways, Barry came back and I was like, "Oh man, yeah, I remember really enjoying the shit out of those two seasons." But I'm like, "What the hell even happened? It's been so long." So I was like, "You know what? I'm just going to throw on the premiere and we'll see." I'm like, I remember I really liked the show and I kind of remember where it ended off, but it's been so long and I have a garbage memory. I think it's just cuz we watch so much that things evaporate from my mind if I don't immediately have been watching them recently.
Well,
So,
because television
um,
specifically, right? Like there's so much that you watch from, week to week, month to month, that it kind of feels like, especially with, the way that television is, it's that like you're going from one hot thing to another.
yeah, and that's kind of what happened here. So I started the episode. I thought the opening, and we won't spoil anything because you guys should watch all three seasons of Barry, but like, or two and start this new one. But um, right off the bat, I'm like, this show, that title card smash each time is so good,
It
and
could burn into your screen though, so be
yeah. Oh,
careful.
yeah. It's awesome. And but then immediately I was like, I gotta pause this because like I don't remember like it doesn't do like at least for me because I watched it on Crave. It didn't do like a previously on Barry or something like that. Maybe if you're watching it live, they do that kind of stuff still. But like,
Previously on
um,
Lost.
well, that's what I mean. I need that. I'm a moron. I'm like, I don't remember what was happening. So like I kind of do, but like I'm like, all right. So I found a YouTube channel called Recap and Chill. Shout out to that guy. And he does recaps for basically, I don't know how he has the time, but basically it seems like every TV show. So I watched the recap of season 1 and 2 of Barry. So I highly recommend that for any TV show that you're not, I know a lot of people are rewatching the first two seasons because they're only 25 to 30-minute episodes and only 6 or 7 episodes a season, I think, or
Yeah, because
nine.
usually HBO stuff
Um,
isn't a full
yeah,
like
but you can
20
fly through
episodes,
them,
right?
and I
Yeah.
love that they're 20 some minutes. And
And you don't want it to end. Like that's the
no,
thing.
that's
Where
the thing too. Yes, it's some shows overstay their welcome. I'll talk about Better Call Saul, which I
Well, I think
don't
even
think it does, but
Severance, like I like
um,
Severance a lot, but like it feels like each, or at least the first few episodes being nearly, some of them are, 50
over an hour.
minutes.
Yeah,
And there's a
yeah.
lot of setup in order to have a cliffhanger to get you to watch the next episode, where
Mhm.
it's kind of like it's a little over stuff for each episode, where like with Barry, like there's so much going on, but at the same time,
How
it
much they
each
put into those 29 minutes or whatever
yeah,
is
each episode ends with you truly wanting to watch the next episode, and it doesn't feel like
yeah.
it overstays its welcome.
I really still think HBO is at the top of the streamers when it comes to like original programming and stuff, and
Well, they
Barry
can
is
they can
another.
fudge things up though. I mean, look at Game of Thrones,
Oh,
right?
they're not perfect, don't get me wrong, but I just think from a production standpoint, and they just kind of have it down pat. Um, and yeah, Barry is fantastic. So you guys should go back. Like, there's so much I want to talk about in that episode, but we'll wait maybe until the season's done. But like, um, just a shout out to Barry, and you should definitely in Canada get Crave or HBO Max in the US and catch up on those first two seasons because like I think it is genuinely funny. It's genuinely nerve wracking. It's genuinely disturbing at times. And I think Bill Hader is fucking awesome. Henry Winkler is awesome. Um, I don't have enough good things to say about that show, and I feel like in that recap especially, I was like, oh fuck, I forgot that happened. That was intense or like insane. And like, there's so many of those moments that I'm like, oh, I'm having flashbacks of how I felt watching that for the first time, and I think it balances all those tones really, really well because I was having a conversation moving on to Severance um, with some people that is Severance a dark comedy? And I was like, I struggled answering yes to that because I felt like Severance is a drama with darkly comedic elements, where I found Barry leaning more into the comedy to be a dark comedy with dramatic elements. Um, that being said, I don't think like there's a lot of similarities between what I just said, and I don't think that there's maybe a huge difference. And that's just kind of a vibe that is hard to tackle and do right. And I feel like both of those shows do a very good job with that in very different ways. And I really enjoyed Severance. Like, I think that it's very addictive television. I think Ben Stiller's direction, he directed hey, hey Siri, stop. Hey Apple, it's trying to get some extra integration into the show. But Ben Stiller's direction in those first couple episodes and the last couple, and kind of spearheading that series, I think are excellent to perform. Adam Scott is great, talking about like comedians like him and Bill Hader being like these guys that can give genuinely good dramatic performances as well while still being very funny.
He hasn't
And
been
I
that
just
good
thought,
since Piranha 3D.
yeah, no, I mean, Adam Scott is great in this. And like, I just love them tackling, a toxic workplace and like these, big companies that kind of treat their employees like shit. But then also on top of that, having that layer of, from a personal perspective of, the morality between what's going on there. And it's not just the job taking advantage of these people, but it's the people taking advantage of themselves weirdly. And I don't know, I think there's so much great in that show. I think it sometimes, I agree with you that it took a little while to get going, and then also it has a lot of that kind of bullshitty TV stuff, which I know a lot of people love, but personally I find it kind of cheap at times with the needing a cliffhanger in every episode, and especially in the finale. And I'm not going to give anything away if you haven't seen it, but like, it it reminds me a lot of why we were angry at Dune, where I'm just like, I'm very much a person that I need you to tell me. And some of the criticisms we had with Yellow Jackets, where I'm just like, it's that classic TV stuff. And I think that's why I'm ultimately a movie guy over a TV guy, or I really love miniseries because they're just longer movies, where I'm like, I don't like the bullshitty, like, I'm going to leave you with a huge cliffhanger and now you got to wait a year and a half until you figure that out. And it's not that you told me a complete story in that first season, you ended it partway through the story. And I get that, a TV series is one very long spread out story, but I feel like season arcs, while Severance had one and I feel like they do mostly accomplish what they were trying to do in that season, I still think had some of that bullshitty kind of TV stuff that I didn't ultimately love. But overall, I think it's awesome. And, I can't wait for the second season. And I think it touches on a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, I think when it comes to television, it's one of those situations where it's like you're investing more time in it as well. So
Yeah.
if the ultimate conclusion of this show, no matter like how many seasons it's going to be, if it's going to be, a few seasons or if it's going to be 5 or 6 seasons, and once it gets to the place that it eventually gets to, you don't want to feel burnt the way that you did watching something like Game of Thrones, where you put so much of your own time and interest in it and getting there, and it kind of felt like, oh well, that was either rushed or it was designed in a way that you didn't need all this extra subplots or B storylines in order to get to where you ultimately were going. Tell the best version of your story within this, like a mini series. Again, like Watchmen, I think is the perfect example of that, where it's like Damon Lindelof knew that the story he was telling was this complete narrative, and at the end of it, it's like, yeah, I could come back and do more with it, or I could just walk away and say that like I told the best version of this narrative in this parameter. And with Severance, like, it is very addictive. It is extremely well made. It's well written, and I really like the moral ambiguity of, you know, the office life versus
Yeah.
your home life, and them being separated and kind of creating a new
Split personalities.
yeah,
Essentially.
or a new being even. and
Yeah,
and so
essentially.
so
Yeah.
like
Even though it's in
what the
your
more
body, you're creating another person, right?
yeah, and the idea of like, like, this is an office space, as you mentioned. It's not like a comedy first and foremost, but it is, there is a dark sense of humor to, the procedural elements of going into work on a daily basis, and, the company not caring for you and having goals to build up to, and sort of
The little
how
parties that they do and shit is just like
Defiant
it's make
Jazz and
yeah,
stuff.
making fun of pizza parties that your work will give you and all these kind of shitty things to avoid having to pay you more and
Yeah.
things like that. Like it touches on all of those things. And for a guy who recently, I'm very vocal about me quitting my job last February for a lot of reasons that they're kind of poking fun at in this show of just these places that don't really give a shit about you and only care about the productivity and ultimately the job and don't treat you like a human. So it's just such a cool way to use sci-fi to go, what is a way that we can kind of really hone in on that and use it in a very literal way, but in a very sci-fi way. And it's so cool.
Yeah, and I again, like, I think the world building and the design, even though it
Oh
is
yeah,
high
and the design is cool.
concept, it is also familiar in like a kind of Orwellian kind of Big
Yeah.
Brother is watching you with Luminon,
That
and
retro futuristic kind of thing
yeah,
too.
everything is kind of like plain and basic and also very symmetrical in its design, but it also kind of feels like it is completely and utterly, imposing over its employees. And like it just feels like it's suffocating you. And the more you learn about the characters in terms of their backstory, even though it's mostly focused on Adam Scott's character, um, like I think the Patricia Arquette character who plays kind of the superior to the office group, um
Yeah.
is fascinating. And I don't want to give anything away, but you look at sort of like how a chain of command works and how things are kind of, ordered through a system, and how one person takes that and then dumps it on somebody else, and then
Yes,
they dump
Nevis
it
and I just
on.
had this conversation, but in about real life
Yeah,
things.
and I really liked how that character and that performance plays out, especially when you get to those last two episodes and you learn more about who that character is in those moments. That's kind of both fascinating and pathetic at the same time, and not
Mhm.
just simply menacing, because she's very menacing, and that
Mhm.
kind of understated quality where she's emotionless but still, completely captivating. And I think that that power dynamic is interesting as well. And I really even loved, like, someone like Yul Vasquez who plays Petey, and he usually plays either like the Milchick or the Patricia Arquette kind of characters on TV shows. He's a really well-known character actor, but like him kind of being the catalyst of how this kind of, story unfolds, I thought was really interesting. And in episode 3, the way that certain things are edited within this character's
Is
mind
awesome. Yeah.
reminded me so much of that episode of Watchmen where, you're on the date with Regina King and Yahya Abdul Mateen II's
Which is
character, and
everything
how,
everywhere all at once.
yeah, and how it's all kind of like connecting on this
Experiencing.
timeline
Oh,
that
it's so
is,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, it's so well constructed. And we talked about this not too long ago. Apple does seem to be finding a bit of a strong spot now, or a footing at least, with their television side of things, because you have, Ted Lasso, which was kind of the flagship show for the majority of it, but now you have Severance, and I've heard Slow Horses is actually really good as well with Gary
Yeah.
Oldman. So like they're finally
They're
kind of,
putting their money where their mouth is kind of in funding some cool stuff, and it seems to be working for them.
yeah, and like there's some stuff coming up as well that it's like, okay, like this, looks really interesting, and can work, and it just doesn't feel like, Apple is throwing money at shows that, really aren't getting an audience. And again, like, Servant has done well enough for them, but there's a lot of like,
Morning show and
yeah,
stuff like
but
that.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff like when you go on to, this again, this is inside baseball, and you know we realize that we're very lucky to have this opportunity. But like when you go into like the media section of like what's available to us to watch, there's about like, 5 to 10 shows on there that are still going, that I don't think have ever really connected on really any level
Totally.
audience
And you can
wise.
find them on the main platform too. And they're always very gracious with how early they give us stuff. And Severance I caught really late. Like both me and you waited until basically the finale to kind of catch up with it, because word of mouth is what kind of helped it. I kept hearing people talk about it, and we haven't even brought up John Turturro and Christopher Walken, who are fucking awesome in it. Like
John
John
Turturro, man,
Turturro,
between the
it's
Batman
like,
and
yeah,
this,
like he's so good, and it's just like, again, it's all these archetypes of people you would find at an
you
office, and even that
smug
uh,
motherfucker.
yeah, oh god, he's so good, dude. And like I just, everyone, Zach Cherry is great too, who you guys would know from Spider-Man Homecoming and Shang-Chi, for like, big Marvel fans, and then obviously was in other things like Drunk Bus and Unsane Quickly and stuff like that. But he's a comedian, but like he actually has like a meaty role in this, and I thought he did
He
a
looks
really
like a
great
real
job.
person too. Like he doesn't look like,
Yeah.
he looks like somebody that you would meet in an office space. Like
Yes.
part of this, like some of this cast is like, okay, like Adam Scott is a known character actor and things like that, but like there are some times when you watch, shows or movies that depict the, workspace environment that are hard to believe when you see, a movie star in a blue collar role or a kind of a bigger name. And I think casting a combination of both kind of seasoned character actors like John Turturro and, the character of Dylan in this case, with Cherry, is that you get this nice blend of different, again, archetypes
Yeah.
playing with, the office, working
World, yeah.
relationships. Yeah.
And it's so awesome to kind of, and again, and I think Ben Stiller talked about this, of like working with Apple and kind of the hypocrisy of this show being under Apple, especially with the
Right.
company that they're kind of portraying. But he's just like, you know what? Shout out to them for being like, nah, you can go for it. Like, we're not going to really get in your way. Like, basically, like this company, you could allude to Apple or Amazon or any of these big kind of media conglomerates that do a bunch of different things. And I just think it's really interesting taking that down and breaking down the work life balance and toxic workplaces, and just kind of doing that in this really fucking weird way with this sci-fi lens. And also shout out to Michael Chernus, who you would also know from Spider-Man.
Yeah, he was the
He was
Tinkerer,
the
right?
the Tinkerer, and him as
He
Rickon is so funny. And like
he's
that
one of those
whole,
guys that always shows up because this is a New York based production, and like the two movies that I always think of with him, he was really great in Men in Black 3. He has this one sequence as like a shopkeeper. And
okay,
then
yeah,
in Mistress America, the Noah Baumbach movie, he's
okay.
kind of playing a similar role in this, and sort of like where his arc goes on Severance with the book, I think is amazing.
It's so funny, like that self-help book and like the passages, and just the idea of that these drones basically that don't know any outside life other than work would be inspired by this book that he's written, that's just filled with cliches and just like
But
really
it's meaningful
funny.
because they
It's
don't
like,
have any
it's,
reference
yes,
to it, right?
exactly. And that's what I love, is like that kind of nuance of like, we're laughing at his writing and stuff like that, but like to them it's like it helps them unionize. And like that whole kind of like, there's so much great satire of like that isn't strictly funny, but when you break it down, it is like, it's like I remember yelling, like Nevis and I watching it and being like, oh my god, they're trying to unionize, but in the way that this show is showing it is so fucking funny, how they keep the departments but then also disturbing and like weird at times. And like there's a whole sequence in the where you think the waffle party is going, you're not going to guess where it goes.
I didn't
And
realize that how literal it
like
was going to be though as well.
yeah,
Like when they were talking about the waffle party, I was like, okay, there's going to be some kind of like, it's going to be some sort of an allusion or metaphor to something, but
and
there
it
is a
kind of
little,
is, but like
but
it's
there's but
very
there still
literal
are
as well.
waffles.
And then that's what's amazing, like all those little things of like, oh, you get these little rewards for doing, like you get a finger trap, you get all this bullshit, you get like these little trophies, or you get
The office perks.
the office perks, that is just like that stuff on top of the unionizing, on top of the layer of like, if you did this to yourself, like the morality of that, but you're not realizing, and who is controlling everything. It's just like there's so much going on, and it's really just got this cool vibe to the whole thing, that it's expertly directed, and production design and everything, and the performances. Like I will Patricia Arquette's always one of those people that I can't there's sometimes, like I think there are times where she's awesome in the show, and then there are times where I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that take, or like that way you delivered that. But because the show has this kind of overall unsettling vibe to it, or this weird kind of vibe to it, I can kind of be okay with it. But um
I have a
sh-
feeling I think I know what she's doing though. I think she's
yeah.
mocking
Oh,
Meryl Streep.
um oh really? You think so?
Because the way that she talks, it's very similar to Meryl
Sorry,
Streep's
keep going.
character to in The Devil Wears Prada. The way that she even says like just says like Adam Scott's name, like Mark, how are you, and things like that. Like there's something really unsettling, but also kind of a parody of Meryl Streep's career in a weird way that I've kept thinking about, like in just in
Sorry,
terms of
keep
like
going, Eric. I have to reconnect my headphones, but keep talking.
yeah. So I honestly I really like that there is this put upon quality of Patricia Arquette that kind of feels again like like part of it is a facade, and like where that arc or in that character arc goes and that storyline goes, I think is really
I'm
worth
back. Sorry.
um you know investing in. But she reminds me so much of Meryl Streep in Devil Wears Prada, the way that she kind
Okay.
of like presents herself, and the way, like I was saying before you cut out there, where like the way that she says Adam Scott's name, like Mark, how are you, and
Yeah,
things
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Like there's something truly unsettling there, but it reminds you a lot of like again, like certain actors have that kind of like put upon facade in everyday life, and like that works, I think, really well for this
I
character.
agree. I think it was more when she was showing anger or stuff in the later episodes that like there's a
Well, she's
sequence in
having a
the
breakdown, right? Because
I
she's
know, I
losing
just
control. And I think that
didn't
that's
buy it.
interesting as well, where like again, you see where that character how that character is treated by Luminon, and how
Oh yeah.
where that kind of goes, I think is fascinating in itself, because again, it's like, you're everybody in some way or another in this company is expendable,
Mhm.
and
Well,
and
that's a great commentary again. Like,
yeah.
do you have a theory? Like, I don't know how spoilery we want to get on this. Everyone should watch Severance. But like I have some theories of what's going on or who Lumen is, and like maybe we'll talk about it off air because like I was just putting thoughts together the other day, and maybe other people have put these thoughts together too. But there's something with the it all being in the basement and then there being an even lower basement. Um, and I hate to always go into the hell or purgatory kind of thing because I know people that was their ongoing theory with Lost for the longest time, but like there's some interesting stuff there of selling your soul to the devil and it being hell and stuff like that. And I mean, I think it's very clear of work is hell
Yeah.
essentially, like an office is hell, and that's kind of what the show is going for, but
And
I
what a
don't know
company
if it's
expects of its employee, right? Like
yeah.
your life is your work to an extent, with at least
Yeah.
half of the character. And again, the last episode does bring up more questions though, in terms of why Mark, the Adam Scott character, is working for the company, in terms of like why the company wanted him to work there, and like what is revealed. That maybe is the one thing I wasn't like, that does feel like the most kind of like obvious moment, where he has a certain
Yeah.
photo, and like the way that they reveal what's in the photo, it's kind of like, okay, like you, like it's supposed to be like a big shock moment, but it doesn't really work, because
But
it
yeah.
it's just you're just obscuring something, and they already know, right? I think it works better at the
I
end of the series, like when he's going to tell somebody else something about that photo or that image.
Yes,
but
rather than him figuring it out
but
or
yeah, but
his
like when he's
image
putting it
figuring it out.
back together, and like his thumb is like in obscuring the image,
Yeah,
it's just kind
totally.
of like,
There's a couple
yeah.
moments like that are that kind of, and even that twist, I didn't call the exact twist. I think Nevis did actually, but um, I could kind of see something like those are the kind of, and I like twisty kind of bullshitty stuff like that in TV, so I'm kind of fine with it. But
I
yeah,
kept thinking
I'm
about
really
belly buttons though as well, with the innies and outies.
so did I. Yeah. But yeah, man, just all around a fantastic show, even with some of those criticisms of like that's just TV stuff that I just don't always buy into. But like I think I just got to get past that and understand that that's how a lot of TV shows work, is they need to hook you for the next episode and they need to hook you for the next season. So you're not always going to get a completely tightly wound story that's going to lead seeds for the next season, although that's how a lot of TV shows work as well. But fair warning, it does just end and give you big cliffhangers like that and doesn't really complete or solve anything. Like, you do get answers, so I'm
But
not
you
saying
also
it's
kind of
like,
know that it's going to leave
yeah,
you hanging. Like by the
yeah,
time you've watched the first 8 episodes, you realize, okay, like we're going to end in a way that's going to just be so anxiety inducing, and like you need to know what's going to happen with these characters in the storyline. And I haven't read anything about the show's creators or what their intent is with the series overall, but I do hope that they have at least, you know, an exit strategy, like even if not everything is completely sort of like bridged together yet, but at least they have an idea of where they want the show to go. Because it does feel like, you know, we talked about this with Yellow Jackets, where they're like, if this was a mini series and it was, you know, like 9, 10 episodes, 13 altogether, I think that like you could convey and do exactly what they're probably going to do over the course of 2 to 5, 6, who knows how many seasons in total, that what they're doing, you know, with, if it were a mini series, like I think it
yeah,
could work either way.
yeah.
But it still is good. It's just that it's also like Barry, where it's like, you know, like when are we gonna, I think they're going soon into production, or if they aren't already in for season 2. But it's like, okay, well, when is season 2 going to be available, right? Like even with the After Party, which is another show on Apple TV Plus that is awesome. Like I never felt like with that, it's like, you know, it's been announced for season 2, but like it told a full story in that first season.
I love the maze of The Office as well. Like, building that as a maze is awesome too. Um, but
I like
yeah,
Milchick quite a bit as well. I like that one line he
yeah,
has where Petey is now gone and Mark is taking over his job, and Milchick is like, "Oh, it's a real shame. I was really rooting for your Mark and Petey's office friendship. It was my
yeah,
favorite."
like stuff like that. That is just manipulative bullshit
But
too
it's
from
also kind
your
of a
like,
commentary on like,
yeah,
you know, the office dynamic of characters on shows. It's like,
oh
oh,
yeah,
the friendship between these characters is the best, or the office romance between these characters is the most interesting. You know, like again, like even
hmm,
look at like The Office, whether it be the British or the American version, and like, you know, the mundanity of having to go into work and, you know, coming home, and the reasoning, I think, for why Mark is doing what he's doing, there is a logistical understanding of like, okay, like I get why he would do what he did.
no,
I think he
totally.
was in a place where he was manipulated.
I think every character is given a good reason of why. We don't know everyone's backstories, but like what we do get out of there, I think it's an interesting kind of thing, because Neva, it brings up interesting questions when you talk about like, would you do it? And I think now, having the context of seeing this show, you probably would go no. But I think before knowing how they're treated in this show, it sounds like an enticing thing, right? Like, even though it's an invasive surgery and things like that, but if you're like, if you could separate your conscience and like into basically you two different things and just go to sleep and you wake up and you're done work and you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, I'm like, that is really enticing, right? Like, if
And
you
you
could
get a
just
bonus
pretend you're
gift certificate
did
to
my
Pips if,
headphones go again?
oh, can you hear me?
Yep, they did.
Oh, they did. And you get a bonus gift certificate to go to Pips if, you know, you find out that you've been injured in any way whatsoever. So yeah, there is something kind of funny about
uh
the dark humor of the world, and like again, what, you know, the goals are, or what you're building to, or the office perks of things. So Matt's trying to fix his headphones at the moment, but yeah, it is a worthwhile show, and I think that it's,
I'm back.
yeah, I was just saying that, you know, like the office perks as well of getting like a Pips gift card or things like that, where the
Yeah,
company feels like, okay, we've
they
covered
did
like,
something wrong. Here,
yeah.
I'll give you a gift card to. I have a story. I shouldn't say it, but like, there's, I had someone offer, be like, I'm sorry I did that. Here's a Starbucks gift card. And I'm
Oh
like,
God.
are you fucking kidding me? I'm like, when I like, anyways, I won't get into that, but great show. Everyone should check it out. It's fantastic. And then the other thing I've been watching is Better Call Saul. They did a 2.5 hour premiere on last Monday, which, in my opinion, a little too much. Because Better Call Saul is still on AMC in its final season. I think it's fantastic. A wonderful follow up. The perfect way to do a prequel to something was, again, but it's been off for a while as well. It finally came back, and I forgot AMC has commercials. So if you watch it live, it's still a network that has commercials, and I'm so not used to that. And that's why it was like 2 1 hour episodes with commercials is 2.5 hours. And I just felt exhausted by the end of it, because it is also a very character driven, slow show at times. So I found myself drifting, and Better Call Saul is one of those shows that I almost feel like it works better in binging for me, or at least a couple episodes, just because I can sit down and get more of it, because it is slow moving, even though I just said 2.5 hours is a lot. But I feel like when you control it with no commercials, weirdly, TV feels different than when you're sitting there and taking a break every couple minutes to watch a couple minutes of commercials. So really enjoyed it. And I like, it's very intriguing to see where they're kind of leading it into Breaking Bad. And I obviously think Bob Odenkirk's fantastic, and I think that show is almost lived up to as good as what Breaking Bad was in a very different way. And I know Breaking Bad was never your thing, really, Eric, but I'm really enjoying it as the perfect way to show how a prequel to something, even though you kind of know what's going to happen, can still be intense um, and reveal a lot without being retconny, and just give you more depth to a character. And I think it's really done that with the Saul Goodman character that you didn't necessarily think you needed 5 seasons of a TV show to get his backstory, but it was great. So I don't have much more to say, but a pretty good premiere that I think I would have been okay with just the 1 hour.
Right. So it's right up
Yeah.
there with Frasier. Better Call Saul and Frasier as spin-off series that have become their own things.
That's true, actually.
Even though Frasier's not a
it's
prequel series, it's a spin-off
it's a
of both Wings and
yeah.
Cheers.
It's not a sequel series, even though it does take place after those other series, right?
Yeah.
But it's a spin-off. But again, spin-offs can be successful. This being,
Not
I
Joey,
think,
though.
different. God, remember they tried that? Oh man. Um, the other thing, if you don't mind me bringing it up, Eric, I haven't finished watching it, but I still need to bring it up, is I watched 3/4 of Moonfall. And you might go, Matt, why didn't you finish Moonfall?
Matt, I was sick in
Um,
bed, dying, and I was able to finish the whole thing.
well, to be fair, Nevis fell asleep, not because she didn't enjoy the movie. She's a big disaster movie fan. She's a big Roland Emmerich fan. Um, Sometimes we start a movie a little too late. Moonfall over 2 hours.
Oh, God.
Um,
It's too long.
it is. Don't get me wrong. Um, and I like to, when she falls asleep, I go, okay, we're watching this movie together. I'm not gonna finish it. I will turn it off and we'll finish it later. And we just got busy with wedding stuff and we haven't gotten back to it. But what I watched of Moonfall, I had a blast. I laughed so hard throughout the first hour and 45 minutes that I watched. I think I have like 20 minutes left or 30 minutes left. I got to the big reveal, if that makes sense. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's where we stopped, because sometimes when Nevis falls asleep, I'll go, you awake? And she goes, yeah, I'm awake. And I'm like, you're not awake. And so I'm like, I'm going to stop it, because you're missing some key information that I feel like we're going to have to go back and rewatch. I can't just explain it to you, because like it's better to be, experienced. But I got to that big twist. And I had such a blast just laughing at this movie. It is, like you said, it's every Roland Emmerich movie ever. They're all the same, but just getting that in 2022, and just how absolutely stupid the entire thing is, and how much it seems like I couldn't tell if they're in on the joke, or if there's a joke at all, or if everyone's completely genuine. And that's the magic of these movies to me, because I'm like, it almost feels like everyone's sincere, but like it's almost got that Fast and the Furious level of like they've embraced what those movies are, where I don't think any of the Roland Emmerich movies have, but I'm still enjoying them on a similar level where I'm like, it's the sincerity of all of this that makes it kind of hilarious. And I just like, I laughed so hard throughout the first hour and 45 minutes. It's so stupid. It looks awful at times. Like
Oh,
the green
it
screen
is some of the
is like,
worst
yeah,
CGI I think
yeah.
I've seen. Like, this is like
That car
asylum
chase, that
level
car chase is
CGI.
awful. The gravity car chase is so bad that I couldn't stop laughing at it. And like you see, it seems like they spent all the money on
Oh,
the
especially when
lost
characters
smoke
are
monster.
hopping, right? Like when
Oh,
you have
dude, it's so
people
funny.
jumping in the no gravity sequences. Oh, it's
Yeah, and
amazing.
then the car gravity sequence is the one that stuck out. Like we made fun of the Moon Knight CG for looking bad. This looks 10 times worse than the Moon Knight
Yeah.
car CG looked like. And it seems like they spent all the money on what the smoke monster from Lost. Like it feels like they spent all the money on that thing and they're like the rest of it doesn't matter.
Even
And then
that
like,
reveal is amazing where they have the one rocket go up to the moon and it's like we got to go back to the moon. And
oh
like
god, the
when they
best.
reveal that it's this AI intelligence and you're just kind of like because
There's
of
so
course it
much.
is.
I
But
wrote so many lines down that like part of me why I think they're in on the joke. Fuck the moon on the side of the
yeah, the
spaceship.
graffiti.
I'm like that they're in on the joke. Like they
But then
have to
there's
be in on the
stuff
joke.
in it that I do
Um,
feel like is almost like it's trying either to be provocative or it's sides like so you have the one character who's kind of like the, you know, goofy sidekick who's obnoxious from Game of Thrones and he has this line like what would Elon do?
yeah,
And like
that dude, I had a theory of that. It almost seems like Elon Musk said if you want to use SpaceX in the movie, you have to say I'm amazing.
yeah,
Like that's the kind of like
he
ego
now
that I
owns
feel like.
Twitter, so
Yeah, god damn it. Fucking Christ. That line where he talks about how much like he loves Elon Musk and there's this SpaceX logo. Um and there's the NASA and they kind of poke fun at NASA and stuff too, but NASA will license out its logo to anything as well. But like the Elon stuff stuck out like a sore thumb that it seemed like something that was very forced by, hey, if you want to use that in the movie, you have to say how amazing Elon Musk is. Which almost adds to it to me of being hilarious. The mounting moon terror is the funniest sentence I've ever heard in my life. Like, I just, the guy being like, you read my blog, and like all of this, there's just, I'm like, I cannot believe like how bad this movie is on such a
Patrick Wilson
large
is terrible.
on
He's
such a
so
large
bad in
scale.
this.
It has every cliche from every disaster movie. It almost seems like it's a parody film. Like it almost seems like they made that movie called Disaster Movie.
Yeah.
That it almost seems like one of those, but done very seriously. Where I'm like, it feels like not another teen movie or something like that. Where like everything they throw in of like him being thrown under the spaceship, him, I mean that in a thrown under the bus way, and like his son being in trouble, the kids, the annoying guy from Game of Thrones, his mom like having like
Dementia,
Alzheimer's
which
and
is basically
dementia.
like the
It's like,
scene in the day after tomorrow where they have to get the kid who has cancer out of
yes,
that
it's
one
all
hospital.
manipulative, like awful, like kind of gross, but then I'm like, I shouldn't be laughing at this because this is something people actually experience and is an awful thing for a family and a person to go
Right,
through.
but the way
And
that
then
this
like
is
they
written and
wait
who it's written
is
by is like
it
by
makes it hilarious.
robots.
Yes,
Like
it
this is
makes
like
it
an
hilarious.
algorithm. Like this is
Yeah.
literally like you took like you literally said to an AI unit, write me a disaster movie, but only use the tropes that are found in Roland Emmerich films. Because there's one thing that I do find very weird about Roland Emmerich movies when it comes to relationships between characters. He seems to have this thing where you have characters that are either married or a couple that have a falling out based on something that happens in one of the two characters' career that is so devastating that they completely, divorce or break
Yeah.
up or what
It
have
it
you.
fucks up the person's life so much that it fucks up their
and
marriage
and
and everything,
then
yeah.
you jump to years later and one of the two characters has moved on and has gotten remarried or is in a relationship again, and that person's actually kind of a decent halfway good person, but then they get killed off, and then the original husband or wife or whatever is back in the scene again, and that is basically the
It's just
same scene. Like it's 2012 with
I mean, it's
Amanda
every
Peet and John Cusack's characters.
but then that's what I mean, those tropes, and then that's just kind of what makes the movie so funny. Like even like Patrick Wilson going and working on his fucking his his car and shit like that. Like all of this stuff, I'm just like I could every
Or
scene, I'm
Charlie
like,
Plummer
oh
as
my
his
god.
son, where there's
Oh
like
my, what
no
is that
real
accent?
connection.
And what is that
connection.
accent? Why is he talking like that? No one else in his family talks like that. It's just like, oh, and my god, I can't believe it's taken me this long to bring it up. The de-aging in the first scene, I'm like,
Yeah,
why does everyone look like that? It's only 10 years ago. Like it's not
it's
like
2012, man.
They made Halle Berry look like a giant baby. And I'm like, why?
And she
Why?
looks like
She looks
young
great.
anyways.
I know you didn't need to do that. Like she barely
No.
looks different, but you made her look different. I'm like, if I Googled a picture of Halle Berry 10 years ago, I'm like, that's not what she looks like. Patrick Wilson, the same. Like he has more, I guess he's more weathered on his face now, but they smooth everything out to make it just like I'm just like, it looks like you take that like Russian face app that everyone was using like a little while ago and did that baby filter on people that just like made them look younger, but it looked like this uncanny valley kind of weird thing. Like I couldn't right from the beginning. I'm like, I kept laughing. I'm like, why did they de-age them? I'm like, there's no reason to. It's 10 years ago. I'm like, they wouldn't look that much different. And even if you didn't age them, 10 years is not that big of a deal.
No.
Like they needed to make it like so like this was 10 years ago. And it's just
Oh,
like, oh my God. Like it's so
Don-
funny.
Donald Sutherland's cameo is
Oh my God.
amazing. I have
Yes.
never laughed so
Yeah.
much, and in like a character's exit has already been presented. It's like, yeah, I've got to go to my desk and fucking clear my
It's
brain.
so funny, dude. And
It's
like
so bad. And like that was the other thing. I don't know about you, but like I was watching this, and in the third act, Patrick Wilson's giving out like these orders or like narrating what they're
remember I
doing.
haven't finished yet, but
No. This isn't spoiler for anything, but his voice for some reason kept picking up on Siri, like my phone and my watch,
was
and
it something he was saying that was similar to that or
I don't know. It was
someone's
just
name
picking
or
up multiple times where it was like, sorry, I didn't hear what you said, or I'll look into that, and things like like every time he was talking, it was just ridiculous. And then also Barry and
Oh, that happened to
Moonfall.
me once too, dude. I think. Like I forget what he was saying, but that actually I remember now lying in bed or something and it went off once. But anyways, keep
And
going.
also
Sorry.
Barry and Moonfall sharing Toto, the
By
song
Africa, yeah.
Africa. Yeah,
Yeah, or not, sorry, Africa by Toto, yeah.
yeah.
Michael Pena, like, I'm like, why does he have, like, a whole, like, security team? I'm like, isn't he just, like, a car salesman? Like,
Yeah.
wasn't he just, like, a Lexus, like, car? Maybe he owns a car dealership, but, like, when they drive up to his, like, compound and there's all those,
Oh, I
like,
think it's just a
people
gated
there.
community. I think that's
Right,
what
okay,
that
and they've
was.
all just taken up arms and just,
Yeah,
like,
because
are
the
yeah.
joke is that one of them's name is Karen.
Great. Super, yeah, super funny. That's the times where they're trying to be genuinely funny, the movie's not funny, and then when they're just not trying to be funny, it's hilarious. And anyways, I still have to finish the last 40 minutes or so.
God, it's so
Um
long.
and I was having a blast though. It's one of those movies that like if you're in the right mood and you buy into how spectacularly stupid it is, I think you can kind of have fun with it. Um, and it does help if you're a little impaired as well. I will say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, in
Um,
Canada, it's available on Amazon Prime, and it's one of those things where it's like, I think Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich need to get back together, because apart they're terrible. With Dean Devlin having made Geostorm, and then Roland Emmerich doing this, but together they make
Geostorm is awful.
mediocre movies. Oh, they're both bad. They're both terrible, and they're both like ridiculous in terms of like their plotting. It's just ugh. Moonfall.
I cannot believe it cost $150 million.
Where did the money go?
The CG is awful.
Because the
It's
money
so
is not
funny.
on screen. I'm telling you,
It's
is
so funny. It's so funny.
awful.
Anyways, greatest.
I gotta
movie
go
ever
back
made.
to my desk and kill myself now.
It takes itself so seriously, which is part of the fun. Oh my god, that's great. Eric, we got some big trailers last week.
yes, we
One
did.
that we've been waiting for a very long time. And
Crimes
a
of the
movie.
Future.
Yeah, exactly. You want to start there, or you
Yeah.
want to start?
Yeah, because that's the one we've been waiting for a while now.
Yeah, we did get. So we got the Cannes announcement, which we will go over the movies in a second. But from a trailer standpoint, yes, we did get our first teaser for David Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future, as well as the first trailer for Taika Waititi's Thor: Love and Thunder, which people have been waiting a very long time. But I know you're very excited for Crimes of the Future. What did you think of that first trailer?
It's a David Cronenberg movie.
Yeah.
I'm excited for some weird body horror modification, and probably a lot of polarizing opinions on the film, as many of David Cronenberg's movies are. But again, like, it goes back to him as a filmmaker, and not only that, but someone who, when you're describing a subgenre of horror, you call it Cronenbergian. I mean, even last year with T10, that won the Palme d'Or.
Yeah.
Like, him making a movie, the last thing he did was Maps to the Stars, and this might be his last film. I don't know. He's 79, and like, he doing this, and it's not an adaptation of the short film that he did in the 1970s, also called Crimes of the Future. This is a different storyline, but from everything that we've seen and heard, it definitely is a vision of what David Cronenberg would think the future is. So I'm just excited on that level of getting a new David Cronenberg movie that is kind of playing with themes and ideas that have been throughout his entire career, but going back to kind of like the science fiction horror elements that we saw in movies like Rabid and Shivers and The Brood and things like that, where
Which we haven't gotten in a little while, right?
yeah, because his movies, like his career, has evolved. I mean, it's always been there, and it still has been in movies like A History of Violence and Eastern Promises, but there was more of a kind of the genre that it was playing within in those movies weren't necessarily just horror films, or like, I mean, you just watched The Fly a couple years ago with me for the first time, and like, you look at that, like, that's probably closer to what Crimes is, or Existence,
Yeah.
even than what he did with Maps to the Stars, Cosmopolis, A Dangerous Method. Like, he was trying to kind of go outside of his wheelhouse a little bit, while still incorporating elements, and some of those movies worked better than others. So it'll be interesting to see him kind of go back to tackle material that he's known for, and will he have something really interesting to say, or will, because like a lot of his stuff, like starting from like Videodrome, was always kind of ahead of what people were thinking in like reality television and sensationalism, and how we absorb technology. And so now I wonder if it will be,
I think he'll have that with body modifications, right? In this, which I
yeah,
know his other movies have, but
but
like,
I do
think that
wonder though,
cyberpunk-y
if
stuff.
like it'll be something like, if it'll still be cutting edge. Like, will it be something that's saying like, okay, well, we've already kind of gotten there in terms of what he's talking about in terms of commentary, or will
Yeah,
it be
maybe.
something that kind of is like, oh, the godfather of this genre still
The
has something,
Bodfather.
Yeah,
We got the Rodfather with Adrian Lin. We got
the
the Bodfather,
yeah,
David
will he
Cronenberg.
have something new and exciting to say about it all? Which, I'm just
Yeah.
hopeful that will, I mean, it's supposed to come out in June, so
That's
um,
earlier than I thought.
yeah.
And yeah, for a guy who's not the biggest David Cronenberg guy, I don't dislike him. I just never been someone that I've gone and like through his entire filmography, or I'm just a bad Canadian pretty much. But I've seen a good chunk of his movies, and I've seen, more of his mainstream stuff, his later stuff in his career, right? And then I've gone back and looked at, Watch the Fly with You. I own Videodrome on Criterion and things like that. But
But
I thought that
you've seen his influence, though. I mean, I mentioned
sure.
T10, but you've seen his influence on other
Oh,
filmmakers
totally. Yeah. And I
throughout
know his
the
stuff.
last,
Yeah.
like 20, 30 odd years. I mean,
Oh,
look at something even
absolutely.
like
Yeah.
District 9, where you have the Sharlto Copley character transforming throughout that film, and like the mutation of human into something else,
Yeah, I
you
think
know.
he's one of those guys that's very well known in Canada, very well known in from filmmakers, like who is a guy who maybe hasn't crossed into like, he did A History of Violence and Eastern Promises, which are obviously his two biggest
Well, The
movies, I
Fly
think,
as
right?
well
And
was a
and
big
The
one
Fly
for
was a
him,
big
and
one
The
because it
Dead
was
Zone,
Fox. Yeah.
which was
Yeah,
a
I
Stephen
mean,
King adaptation.
yeah, earlier, and then he came back, I think, with those later movies that I'm more familiar with.
And then Jeremy
Um
Irons also working with him in Dead Ringers and Madame Butterfly. When
mhm.
Jeremy Irons won the Oscar for Reversal of Fortune the following year, he thanked David Cronenberg because
It's awesome. Yeah.
a reason why a lot of people thought Jeremy Irons is very good in Reversal of Fortune, but a, a lot of people thought that he should have been nominated and won for Dead Ringers, and so that kind of helped him with Reversal of
Yeah.
Fortune. And
That's
so
why I think
he even says that in the thank you speech.
and Cronenberg's such an interesting guy and a filmmaker because he's had those kind of, like you said, I forget that those movies, I guess I feel like those movies are smaller than they were. But I feel like I guess he did have that time where he did a couple big things that were still on the weird side of things, but were bigger. And then I love A History of Violence. Like I love that movie. And I'm excited for this. I don't know what to expect, and I'm more excited for you. The trailer, obviously doesn't show much, just shows a little bit of that, cyberpunky body modification things, and I'm sure it'll be gross and weird. And I like everyone involved, like him teaming with Viggo Mortensen again is really exciting. I love Kristen Stewart as an actress. I love Leia Seydoux. Like, so there's a lot of stuff going on that I think he's working with interesting people, and I think we've seen so little of it. We just know that all those things you brought up are going to be kind of in the movie. And I think his stuff, recently has this weird digitally look. And I'm gonna shit on Canadian stuff again, but it
Well,
has
you're
this
talking, I think, specifically about
like
Cosmopolis, which I
yeah,
think
and Maps of the Stars, even to an extent. I think his last couple things that I've seen has this, and I see it a bit in this trailer that it worries me, where it has this kind of like, I don't know, this. It's not cheap, but it's this digital kind of look that I don't
do you remember the show
love.
Lex? I don't know
Like,
why I'm bringing this
yeah,
up, but it kind of
yeah,
looks a little bit like that, which was like
yeah,
this weird Canadian cult series from, I think, like the
yeah,
late 90s, early 2000s that Showcase would sometimes play, and it kind of like the CGI and some of the art direction of it was kind of like very much post production, but it was kind of
yeah,
like that cheaper side of CGI, and that's kind of what David Cronenberg's always been like that, where it's like his best stuff I think was in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s before, like, pre CG, because it was all practical effects, and even though some of those effects don't look real, they're more provocative
yeah.
in their imagery than they are when it
And the
is
stuff that's
like,
shot on film with practical effects more
yeah,
interesting to me and
than green
looks.
screen.
Yeah, and I just think that throws me off a little bit. But
But then
I'm
his son is
excited
also now
nonetheless.
working as a
Yeah.
filmmaker, with
Yeah.
Antiviral and Possessor, and he
Neon
actually
loves them.
also has a movie coming out this year as well with Alexander Skarsgård, Infinity Pool.
Yeah.
So both. So it's a good year for David for Cronenberg fans in general, and I believe actually his daughter Caitlin Cronenberg, who is a photographer, is making her first film coming up.
That's
So
awesome. Release them all, triple feature.
yeah.
Love that. So yeah, I'm intrigued, and June is earlier than I expected, and we'll hear more about it out of Cannes. So in May, so which is
Will it be booed like
basically
Crash? We'll find out.
a couple
So
weeks, man.
Crash played at Cannes back in the mid '90s, and Francis Ford Coppola was the head of the jury that year. He fucking hated the movie, and he made sure that it would not get any award. And now
Bless him.
Crash is considered again like this,
Cult
cult
classic kind of
film,
thing.
right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then the other big trailer, which is not saying that this one, one very much your alley, one very much mine. I know you're still excited for this,
Yeah,
but
I mean Thor's not
um,
going to fuck his hammer,
uh,
which is
don't never
unfortunate.
never say never, man. Maybe Korg though. So we got the first trailer for Thor: Love and Thunder. So we've been eagerly anticipating it because the movie, it's the shortest span between a trailer and a movie from Marvel that we have ever gotten. So we got the Thor: Love and Thunder trailer, and I thought it looked great. Looks like more Thor Ragnarok, but even kind of going even further into the kind of 80s kind of vibe that movie brought on, leaning into the comedy. We don't get any of Gore the God Butcher the villain, so it's very much like a teaser and a vibe trailer for me that leans heavily into the music and the colors and the comedy and things like that. And just it's interesting being the first solo Marvel movie that's gone to 4 films. And I think Thor's gone through a lot through the whole Infinity Saga, and I love that Hemsworth is sticking with this character because it finally found its vibe in Ragnarok. I found so I'm pumped for this. I love the use of Sweet Child of Mine. I love the going through the phases of Thor when he was younger into now, him with the Guardians, the retiring angle. More Korg is always better for me. You see the stuff on New Asgard kind of going through turmoil, probably trying to be involved as a country and being involved in the you see Meek in a nice business suit as Valkyrie's secretary, and like I don't know, I'm loving everything I'm seeing so far. And then you get Natalie Portman as the mighty Thor at the end, and she
Which is
looks
basically
dope.
like Doc Ock at the end of the No Way Home trailer,
Yeah.
that teaser. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like I'm sure it's going to be fun. I'm sure it'll be an enjoyable, but there's just something right now where like I'm kind of burnt out on Taika Waititi a little bit.
I think a lot of people are kind of feeling that a little bit.
Where like I like the guy a lot, and I think he is a very creative personality and has something to contribute, but at the same time I think like whether it's him or whether it's the industry that's given him maybe too much credibility in his work, like I really want to rewatch Jojo Rabbit because I just remember like just thinking it was okay at best,
Mhm.
and like some people are like, oh, this is like revolutionary, and like this
But
is
then there are other people who fucking hate that movie too,
no,
and I think
and
that's why.
I like a lot of his earlier stuff. Like I think Boy is his best film, and I really like parts of Hunt for the Wilder People, and What We Do in the Shadows, which I think the show is also really well done. um but there's just something about him where like it just kind of feels like less is more. And even though he's only really directing this, I mean, yeah, he's playing Korg, but like there's just something about like his performance like last year, even in like Free Guy, that just kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. And like I just kind of feel like again, like we're gonna get this, and we're probably gonna get Next Goal Wins this year as well. And it's yeah, it just kind of feels like yeah, I'm a little bit burnt out on him right now. So
Interesting. Yeah, I get that. I'm I'm more burnt out by him as a personality.
that's what I mean for
Um,
the most part. Like just
Not
like
necessarily as a filmmaker, because I feel like he's still really like the vibe he brought to Thor and what he brought to Thor. I think I still find his comedy very, very funny, his sense of humor very funny. And I think he's got a good handle on this version of this character. And I think bringing in, the mighty Thor character and that storyline and where they're putting Thor in this, I think is a really cool angle. I totally understand his social media personality. his, as he got bigger and more of a known name, he started to show up everywhere. And I think he can be a bit grating on people, and I totally understand that. But when it comes to Thor and the character and Korg, I think is hilarious. Like, and I like him and stuff like that. Like, I agree with you with Free Guy and him popping up in different things. I'm like, um, I think is awful, but I liked Jojo Rabbit enough. I've had no real desire to rewatch it, and I haven't really thought about it much, but um I like his version of Thor, and it's just kind of reiterated that. I like that it's just the goofy metal vibes of it, and I'm kind of all in. I'm pumped for it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the best stuff in the trailer is some of the kind of references and 80 homages to things like John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China
Yeah.
and what have you. And
Or
like,
Thor and Babysitter's Club.
yeah,
No, sorry,
and
Babysitter's Club? No, wait, Babysitter.
Adventures in
Um,
Babysitting.
what was that movie I watched in
Yeah,
my
Adventures in Babysitting.
Adventures in Babysitting? I said
Yeah,
the
with Elizabeth
Babysitter's Club.
Shue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think like that stuff will be fun. And I think the other thing as well, maybe I'm just not the biggest fan of, is like it doesn't look bad per se, but it is very much green screened, and like
Yeah.
everything kind of does have, and I've always had that problem with the Thor movies where
Yeah.
everything,
Ragnarok, even, I'm like, it looks bad
yeah,
at times. Yeah.
the
I
facade of everything.
Yeah, I think it does have that kind of 2D on a 3D background, or vice versa look to it, because there's a bunch of stuff in Thor Ragnarok. I remember, because I've seen it so many times, that I'm like, ooh, this looks a bit rough when it comes to like Hela in front of Asgard and all of that stuff. So I totally see, like, we see Olympus in this. You see Russell Crowe from behind as Zeus, and you're gonna get, I think, a lot of Olympus, which will give you those. They needed a place to kind of replace Asgard from a visual standpoint, so Olympus will be that spot.
Where
Um,
Gerard Butler should be playing Zeus.
yeah,
Olympus has fallen.
yeah. There's a great gag there somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, I get what you're saying. I think this is the first MCU movie, if I'm not mistaken, to use that Mandalorian technology of like that. I forget what they call it, but that kind of dome thing from Lucasfilm, where they kind of
Right.
have the 3D background that moves with the camera to give you more accurate lighting. And I'm not saying, obviously, those shots of Olympus and things like that are all still CG, and even those backgrounds that they use. I'm curious to see if that will feel more immersive or look better.
Right.
Um, because I think I do really love that technology, and I think it's really cool, and I like it more than green screen. But yeah, I'm just ready to have fun, and laugh, and I'm sure it'll get serious because the Gore the God Butcher character, and even all the stuff Thor's gone through. Like, I think it'll those movies have a fun vibe, but he's still gone through some heavy shit, and I think there's a good balance there. But I'm surprised you don't see Christian Bale in it, and I wonder if they're still trying to nail down the look, or
I think it maybe
um
has to do with plot. I think that there's stuff in probably hit that story that will probably give away certain things. So it's almost like,
yeah, you
let's
even
kind
had
of
the Moon
keep him
Knight
out of that.
theory, right? Like,
Well, I
uh,
mean, I mean, they're introducing God characters in, Moon Knight right now, and it kind of feels like, okay, well, this is, obviously Doctor Strange is coming up first, but in terms of like things that would connect almost directly, or there should probably be at least some reference to, those characters, or just the greater scale, because again, like, if you're having a god killer come in and like wipe out half of them and like go after Thor, like, it feels like Khonshu would be one of those characters that would be on a hit list. So
yeah, it could be cool. Like, imagine Christian Bale showing up in one of the, like, in the finale, like kind of what what's his name is Kang. Jonathan Majors showed up at the end of Loki. Like, um could be cool. I don't know if you would get Christian Bale for one episode of but maybe that's part of the deal that he made. But to set up Love and Thunder. But I just liked it as a vibe check, and I'm curious to see how they bring back some of the other characters and how everyone's involved. All the Guardian stuff, like, it doesn't seem like they'll be in it that much. It seems like a first act kind of thing of
well,
like
maybe
just
first and third, maybe they come back into the fight in the final act when like Thor needs to like work with a team of people, and so you'll have the mighty Thor, you'll have Valkyrie, you'll
and
have
then the
Korg, and then they come in
Guardians.
and kind of help him out.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm pumped though. Yeah, I get everything you're saying about Taika, but I I just like what he brought with Ragnarok, and it's one of my favorite MCU movies, and I'm ready for more of that. So I'm pumped.
And then
Um,
Ms. Marvel as well is going to be starting in June, right? So they
yeah,
announced.
we're getting that soon. Yeah, I don't know. Have we not recorded since they announced that? But
Nope, we
like
haven't.
early June for Ms. Marvel. We getting 2 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi
Now is that going to
to
screen for
premiere.
press? Because I heard that it's not.
Obi-Wan, you heard that?
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, it's so. I mean, we're just in an interesting spot with spoilers and different things like that, where press can be trusted because of embargoes, but then they also can't because some people break them, and like, you can tell everyone, hey, this is embargoed. You can't talk about it until this time. But if you show people stuff before it's shown to like a mass audience, you're still risking someone spoiling stuff. So like we're in an interesting spot. We're seeing Doctor Strange the same time as the LA premiere because they didn't want anyone seeing it beforehand. So that's interesting with Obi-Wan. Maybe they're not screening the episodes. Moon Knight, we got 4 episodes though. So it's like, it's a little bit all over the place, right? But
Mhm.
like we're finally caught up with everyone on Moon Knight. We had to wait a month, but like we're at a point where now we have not seen those last 2 episodes. Everyone's caught up with us. Um, Everyone got the big twist in the last episode. So that I think that didn't really leak all that much. I'm sure it was on some Reddit posts and stuff like that for the people who are looking for spoilers, but it wasn't like, and I guess it was big enough where it was still like you still had to be following the show to really understand what that twist was like. Where I don't think you could have spoiled it. You could have sort of spoiled that, but I'm surprised they gave us the 4 episodes and trusted everyone for that not to leak to everyone. But um, yeah, man, I don't know. I'm pumped. There's a lot of stuff coming out in the next. It feels like I forget that we're entering May and we have Doctor Strange next week. So
Yeah, I mean, do we have any Marvel stuff that's coming out in like the second half of the year? Like, is it all front loaded this year?
no, we have well, we were supposed to get Black Panther too, remember? But
Right,
like I don't know.
because it's November, right?
Yeah. And then we're supposed to get She-Hulk, right? Later this year. Um I don't know movie wise. I mean, CinemaCon this week, so we might hear some stuff at the Disney presentation, right?
Right.
Like we might not get footage or anything, but that's where the Black Panther footage first premiered with CinemaCon. I remember that. And and then we saw it much later in the year, but it'll be interesting to see what they kind of show this week, if maybe they have Kevin Feige come out and talk about it, but um, I'm not entirely sure. What the hell is that noise? Is this in my headphones again?
No, that would
What is
probably
going
be
on? What?
the sink.
Oh,
Someone's
was that
using a sink.
at
Yeah,
your house
yeah.
or mine? Okay. I'm like, what is that noise? This episode, all the technical stuff. Um, and then this year we're supposed to get, yeah, Black Panther's the next thing, and then the Marvels in February.
Yeah.
Some people had a theory that those might swap because the Marvels might be done, or Black Panther might have more work.
Well, if Miss Marvel is
But
also coming out in June, right? So
yeah. And then on the TV front, yeah, you have She-Hulk. You have that Michael Giacchino Halloween special with Gail Garcia Bernal, right? And
Werewolf at
then
Night
Werewolf by Night.
by night, and that
And
also
then
connects to Moon Knight as well, because that's where Moon Knight first made his debut.
you have Guardians holiday special this year, as well as we might get Secret Invasion. So
And
I don't
Blade's
know.
supposed to shoot this summer, I think. I was,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
So we'll see, but Thor looks fun. So we'll see on that point. Any other trailers that we missed or no?
I think
Probably
those are
not.
the
Those are the
big two. But other than that, I can't think of anything. I mean, like, I'm sure we'll get a lot of stuff this week with CinemaCon happening. So
yes. And I was gonna do that ranking, but I think we've kind of we probably need to do that on another show. We're already an hour and 20 minutes in where we got to
Yeah,
do.
I mean, ultimately, I think the best experience is just seeing a movie in a theater.
But
Ultimately,
I want to get
because
into the nitty gritty. I agree with you there. I think we all agree with that.
yeah,
And so I'm going to save it for another episode or maybe a smaller when there's not so much other shit we have to talk about and things like that. Because I would love, like, I agree with you. Obviously, going to the movies is the best way. But I feel like there's so many different ways you can kind of see a movie that I think it would be interesting to kind of rank them and talk about each one and what is a actually a good one, what is better than others. Like you can even get it down to 35 mil versus digital versus IMAX digital versus Limax versus IMAX film versus 40x versus VIP versus, and the pros and cons of each one. So maybe we'll save that for another episode, because I still want to talk about the can lineup, and I think
yeah.
there's a couple big pieces of news that I want to talk about before we wrap, and we'll save that big topic for another episode.
Well, maybe for the
Uh,
next episode, if we're gonna do like more CinemaCon coverage.
yeah, I think that makes sense because that again, we should say like in an hour is the Sony. I'm dating this, but like by the time you listen to this, the first Sony presentation is probably already over. So
Yeah.
we're already kind of behind. And if Sony drops Spider-Man news tonight, if they drop
Ugh,
a
it'll be more
trailer for
Spider-Verse crap.
yeah,
And
like
not
if
like
they
Into the Spider-Verse, but it'll be
which got
like
delayed.
Morbius 2.
So we won't see anything from Spider-Verse probably at least the animated Spider-Verse at this
Yeah.
presentation because they did all
Oh
their
no, I think
delays
you
last
might
week.
because Christopher Miller tweeted that he was going to LA or Las Vegas, pardon me,
Yeah, but that would be weird because when did it get punted to?
next
Like,
year.
yeah, but when? Across the Spider-Verse, I'll look it up. But anyways, we'll cover all the CinemaCon stuff and then maybe talk about our ranking of going to the cinema. On the next
Cinema.
episode, June 2nd. So you're still going to get another CinemaCon before that, but maybe they will show footage or something
Or
like
maybe
that
they're
or
gonna
talk about it.
like talk about like what they're what they're doing with it now. Maybe there's something bigger to like. Obviously, they need time to finish things, but like having it as two parts,
Yeah.
you know.
Um so Eric,
Yes. Yes.
what do you think about the lineup? What are your highlights? I'm curious.
I'm excited. I mean, like it does seem to be A24 adjacent in the competitive and non-competitive fields. You have the new Kelly Reichardt movie. You have another Claire Denis film. She has two movies coming out this year. You have Ruben Ostlund's Triangle of Sadness, which I think both of us are very much looking
Hell
forward
yeah.
to. It's interesting just because, like, again, you look at this crop of films. There's a conversation to be had about parity when it comes to how many women are in competition versus not, and then how many films are just in general in competition this year. And it does seem like there is quite a few movies that are missing in a lot of ways, and whether that's because they're not done yet or they're waiting until the fall festival season. You have Luca Guadagnino's film, which I think is rumored to be a Venice premiere. There's a number of movies where it was like, oh, I thought that this is where it would have its start. And then like also now you have all these studios looking for the next Parasite in a lot of ways, the film that will not only win a Palme d'Or but could also be a Best Picture Oscar winner. And so the films that are available for distribution, something like Triangle of Sadness, you could have distributors looking at it that way, and like, what are the companies that are going to buy those movies? And A24 seems to have a pretty much full lineup from now until like next year. But then like, you have Amazon and Netflix and Apple that are still looking for stuff and are eager enough to buy certain films as well. So there's that angle. And then there's just on top of that, like, what's going to translate. I mean, like, the other thing that's kind of interesting right now is that there's still no jury announced for
Yeah, that
Cannes,
is
which
weird.
is
Isn't there a rumor that it was going to be Asghar Farhadi, but then the legal trouble,
yeah,
like
well,
as the
there's the
head of the
whole
jury?
plagiarism thing
Yeah,
with a hero, but also part of it is to do with like a lot of productions are going on from now until June, July, so a lot of people aren't available to be on this jury, right? And it takes time to be on the jury, but usually it's like, okay, well, we have, you know, the head of the jury's announced even before the
the,
film selection
yeah.
is announced, and so that is, I think, kind of interesting that they don't have that out yet. And like,
The
you know, how,
twist, it's going to be a fan vote this year.
oh yeah, and it'll be a Zack Snyder movie that wins the Palme d'Or. Yeah, so I think like that stuff is kind of interesting. Like there's a couple other movies that I'm curious about. The director of Border has a movie called Holy Spider, which I'm curious about. um yeah, there's a lot of stuff that is playing, you know, within the main competition, but then there's stuff that's also kind of there to kind of, you know, create kind of just interest in a kind of general sense. You have Top Gun Maverick playing, you know, at the fest. You have Alex Garland's Men playing at the fest, and movies like that. So there is the commercial angle as well. And you know, in the next couple of weeks, you're probably going to see a lot of um, you know, news coverage focusing on you know, package deals for potential projects, and like, okay, well, this, you know, person has this movie in the works, and you know, we're taking it to the marketing side, or the you know, the industry side of things, because that's also another big part of Can, is that you have, you know, the
Meetings, and you show a little bit of footage, or you show like a here's what the premise of our movie is,
yeah,
or
we're looking
yeah,
for funding, and that's
yeah,
kind of where that's going to be, you know, like it's fun for cinephiles specifically, because it's almost like that's the CinemaCon version of you know,
of
the
art
art
house
house
movies.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Bong Joon Ho has a new movie and it got funded. Yeah,
Yeah, although I
um,
think Bong Joon-ho is now working with Warner Brothers for his next film,
sure,
so he
yeah,
doesn't have
which
to
makes
worry about
sense.
that. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I don't have much to add. Like you're more of that the can guy than I am, and I haven't super paid attention to it, but I'm excited to much like CinemaCon, from the more, again, very weirdly similar but different like reasons why I'm excited is like we're not at either of them. One is very commercial and like one is, you know, leans art house and leans to cinema. So like I'm just excited to see the reactions both from the CinemaCon presentations and the Cannes film festival, whether it's the deals that are made or the movies that premiere, because like it's that first kind of taste of what you're going to get for the rest of the year, I think, right? Like some
Yeah.
things come out as early enough as like Crimes of Our Future of the Future that come out in June, but then there'll be a lot of stuff that plays TIFF, and TIFF also had a bunch of announcements that they're going back to full capacity at all the venues, and it'll be a normal festival again. There's going to be a festival booklet and or program. There's going to be a new venue, which is still on King Street. So basically, they're taking over the Royal Alexander, I think is the new one, with the Princess of Wales and Roy Thompson Hall. So basically, every theater on King Street is now a TIFF theater, because the Royal Alexander was the only one that they didn't really use, which they will now be using for premieres and stuff. So I love that. It's another kind of theater venue that kind of classic looks like Princess of Wales or Elgin and Winter Garden and stuff like that. So Elgin and Winter Garden are the only ones that I guess they're going back to Ryerson as well. So those are still down on Young Street ish area, but a lot of stuff on King Street. Um, Pumped for that as well. And then Cannes is always that place where we start to kind of hear about those movies that might get released in September, October, November, December that we might see show up at TIFF. So that excites me a lot. On the other news front, we got a couple other things. We got the Netflix. We don't need to go deep into this because I think it's something we've talked about. But Eric, my prediction's looking better than ever. Remember when I was the first person who was like, if anyone's gonna have trouble, we've had done streaming wars episodes and things like that, and you guys can go back and probably find them. It's probably the title of them, or I don't know what the hell episode we talked about all this stuff. We talked about it weekly almost, but like the Netflix quarterly results and stockholders meeting happened, and it people seem to be kind of scared a little bit because they lost subscribers. I think it was either for the first time ever or the second quarter in a row. They're struggling to, at least in the Americas and in a lot of their territories, they're losing members instead of gaining them. And people are worried a bit for them, and I think it's interesting. They're going to lower their cost of spending on original programming. They're going to cut down on password sharing. That's their solution, is like everyone should have their own account. Everyone should pay $22 a month instead of you sharing it with your family. And I'm like, they're in an interesting spot. And just, I'm going to find that episode one day and I'm going to go, I said it first, everyone. It's, out of all of the streamers, they were the first out of the gate. Everyone learned from them. And they hit their market cap so fast because they were the only one there, that they have nowhere to go but down. And I can see them either. I never think, I don't think Netflix will ever go under or anything like that, but I could see a huge acquisition one day where you see an Apple or you see an Amazon, because they have so much money and they have so many other places where they can make money, go, we're going to buy you now. And they'll buy Netflix.
Like
That's my,
Elon Musk buying Twitter.
yeah, thank you for bringing that up again. It's miserable, but that's exactly it, dude. It's just like, I could see them one day fumbling a bit more, um, and ironically being bought by Apple is my prediction. I think Apple will buy Netflix in the next 10 years. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of, I know exactly. I mean, you have talked about it before. I don't know if I'll call you a prophet or anything, but like, I think like the writing was on the wall where, they only had that one revenue stream where Amazon and Apple and even Disney to a certain extent, it wasn't
Disney for
all
sure, yeah.
wasn't all about just the movies and television. They were a multimedia corporation, and then with Amazon, shipping goods and things like that are kind of like their main drive, and then with Apple it's about the technology. So like this was just kind of like them moonlighting basically. Like it's just them kind of like
Everyone
doing
learned
this as like
from
a
them.
side thing. Yeah, and
And
and again, Netflix prospered because they didn't have any competition. And now with all of these smaller and larger streaming services available that have taken a play-by-play from Netflix, there's not a lot of room for where Netflix is going to go. If you have Netflix, or if you are a subscriber, you're a subscriber. They're not going to get any more people. Like, I don't know how you can get more people unless you do the crackdown on
that's just
family
going to piss
sharing
more
and things.
people off.
Oh,
And
that's going to deter
with the
people to cancel their subscriptions that they
when
already
it,
have, so they're
and
going
they
to
keep
lose
raising
more.
prices too, right?
Yeah,
So it's
I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like Netflix is in a lose-lose situation no matter what. And then on top of that, like even just their spending on award stuff, like it's obscene without being smart. It's not very practical. And when they buy a lot of this stuff and then they, distribute it, they don't really advertise everything fairly. Like they don't, like there's stuff that they have that I think is good and that could have reached an audience and could have gotten more people watching, whether it be 5 minutes or the whole thing, but they don't know how to really market their stuff properly. Like they'll market the big things obviously, or something kind of
sort
tracks.
of, but yeah.
Yeah, but they bury a lot of stuff
It
too.
was
And
always quantity over quality, in my
yeah,
opinion. Like it was always that. And that's just not a great strategy. And you put it perfectly, of like all these other places, why I think if Netflix ever gets purchased, it's not for their content. Because they've put out some great shows, a couple of them. And like, it's just like, and I love Cobra Kai. It's one of my favorite things ever, even though they picked that up from Sony on another
and
network and things like that. And
YouTube Red,
YouTube.
yeah.
Yeah. I think if anyone purchases them, it's for their subscriber base, right? Like if anyone buys them, it's because they have so many people subscribed already, where if they bought them and folded it into Apple TV Plus, Apple TV Plus now has all those people, which then they can use to market their very expensive computers and iPhones and software and hardware that they sell, right? And then
And it
Amazon,
cuts out the
another.
competition,
Yeah,
right?
and yes, and that as well. And then Amazon, same reason. They have reasons to want that, want to gain a subscriber base, where Netflix, like you said, it's Netflix, right? Like they're not going to start selling goods, or they're not going to start selling a Netflix computer or box to stream your stuff on. Like their thing was to be everywhere, have content for everyone, even if they didn't really have an identity because of that. And I think it is too early to say rest in peace Netflix, because obviously they have still, what, 200 million subscribers or something. Like it's actually ridiculous still. But I think you look a lot like at Facebook or Meta or whatever you want to call it, right? Like Facebook still has the highest user base of any social media platform, still one of the biggest. But is it really relevant anymore? Like they have Instagram, which I think is relevant to them still, which is what's keeping them kind of, and they do a lot of other things. But I really don't think Facebook is the thing keeping Meta, and they want to get into metaverse stuff, and that's a whole other can of worms. But like that's them trying to survive by going into metaverse stuff, and
And
like I don't
spending
know what.
money that is unnecessary too, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and I don't know what Netflix's solution, because if you just start cracking down on passwords, people are going to go, you know what? I was already thinking that $22 a month is too much. It definitely is now. If now I have to pay for $22 a month and I can't split it with my sister and my mom, and now you're telling me my mom and dad, who are going to have to pay $22 a month for Netflix, they're not fucking doing that. They're not doing that. They don't watch enough on Netflix. The only reason I'm keeping my account is because we like review a lot of this stuff. And like, even then, I don't want to be one of those guys who's like cancels my account and then goes, "Can you give me a free account?" Because I'm reviewing stuff. Like, that's just not me. So I'll like, okay, it's a business expense to me for a little bit of it. It's like Eric and I review the movies and TV shows that are on there. So I'll keep Netflix and give it a fair shot. But like, is there enough on there for me to want to spend $22 a month on it? I don't know. I'd resubscribe for Stranger Things, and I would resubscribe for Cobra Kai. And like, I don't know, I'd go see the movies that they release at Lightbox because they started doing that. And I'm like,
yeah.
and and I don't know, man. Like we're in a really interesting spot. And like I think it's those signs that scare your shareholders, right? And can they bounce back? I'm not saying they can't, but you'd have to like start putting out consistently great stuff, or you're only going to become that thing that people subscribe to because they want to watch Stranger Things for a month, or because they want to watch X for a month. Like I don't know if your backlog of things, like and the other thing on top of that, they never owned any of their content and their original content. Like all these studios are going, okay, we'll give you tier 2 or tier 3 streaming rights, but a lot of the places aren't even going to do that with them anymore. You've seen Sony make deals with them and things like that because Sony doesn't have their own streaming platform. But like, or it's the other way around, where Netflix buys someone to try to bolster their, you know, content output. But I don't know, man. I
Yeah,
do.
I mean, I don't think it's the end. I think that they need to reevaluate and figure out a way to take what they already have and not even try to duplicate the success, but maintain it. And like, maybe it's a kind of a little, I mean, I'm not saying that Netflix is a Ponzi scheme, but like in terms of like it getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where they can't manage it anymore. And like they're putting themselves in further debt to try to win more subscribers over. um which again, like, it feels like anybody that has Netflix or wants Netflix already has it. It's not going to get anybody else on board that doesn't have it already. So it's not
So
really.
now it's retention. You have to convince
Yeah.
those people to keep it, right?
Yeah, and I almost feel like you should be like investing more just on like what is working, and then also try to find a way of cultivating talent. Like, look at what, like, again, like look at like what smaller studios like A24 has done. I don't necessarily agree with what A24 has done branding wise. I think they're kind of getting away from, the filmmakers and not servicing them first and foremost, but at least, you know, they've kind of helped people like Ari Aster and Robert Eggers and the Safdies and, up and coming filmmakers create a name for themselves within this production company, within this studio. And I feel that Netflix, even though it's helping a lot of filmmakers get movies made that otherwise they couldn't, it's not necessarily, you're not going to a Netflix and being like, oh, like I need to go to Netflix because this is where I'll get all my, Jane Campion,
Yeah.
new content. Like I really do feel like they need to kind of build people up. Like I always remember what Lulu Wong said about The Farewell, and the reason why she went with A24 is because she wasn't a name filmmaker yet. But A24, the way that they work is that they make the filmmaker, they advertise the filmmaker first and foremost. Like when you're a Noah Baumbach or Martin Scorsese or someone
And they
like
know their
that.
audience, and that their audience will latch on to that. Where
Exactly,
a
exactly.
Netflix, it's again quantity. It's a mass audience that you're appealing to the masses, and you find your niche groups. But like, it's really hard to find your content
But if you
discovered,
make a
especially.
filmmaker a brand within your
Yeah,
company and make that filmmaker or actor the star attraction that people will want to continue to come back to, that's the kind of thing that I think they need to do more of. They've been trying a little bit with, like, obviously like Ryan Reynolds and The Rock and things like that, but it's just like they're kind of also getting lost in like trying to create IP that is franchisable, and like the franchise stuff really isn't working for them. Obviously, when
no,
series stuff, it is a little bit. Obviously, you mentioned Stranger Things, like Squid Games did very well for them. The miniseries stuff has done well enough.
yeah.
But yeah, like they need to kind of focus in on what is working and not just kind of literally do the quantity over quality thing. They need to now look at quality first.
Well, if they're going to start cutting their spending, right, then because I think I read something that was like, the thing about Netflix is because they did so well out of the gate that you're able to get really high loans, and you're spending more than you're earning, right? Which any
Yeah,
company, when they're becoming successful, does. But they're like, they were spending like someone who had way more money than they had, and they didn't realize, like, eventually when you capped out, is like you're going to have to bring that back down, because you're spending, like, you could get an unlimited amount of subscribers, but if you can't, then you're never going to make that money to pay that money back. And
yeah,
like, that's when you have to go, oh shit, this is how much money we make per year now because this is how many subscribers we have. And it's like, we're not going to get more. If anything, it'll fluctuate between losing some and getting back to where we were. We need to kind of figure out what that money spend is and then spend accordingly, which might be a good thing. Like, it might be a good thing. I don't know. Maybe they have to become more strategic. Maybe they have to be a little bit more careful with their money, so we're getting less content, which means we're getting more, targeted stuff and less stuff on the platform, so they can kind of promote it better. And I don't know, maybe it'll be a blessing in disguise. But right now, people were like, whew, that did not go well for them. And it showed some signs of all these other companies like Disney, like Apple, like, that have other revenues coming in that they can use to make that content, is just like, if you're only going off your subscriber base subscription, that's why you just have to keep raising your price. And there's so many streaming services now, dude. Like, it's just,
yeah,
there's so many that people have choice. And if they go, you don't have what I want, I'm not paying $22. I pay for this and this and this and this and this. So I get it. It'll be interesting to see. But my prediction, at a minute or 1 hour and 42 seconds, 42 minutes, I am dead. 1 hour and 42 minutes of this podcast is that I think Apple, out of anyone, has a lot of money on hand, and they haven't really done any big acquisitions really in recent memory.
Well, I mean,
Like,
they've done like Coda was big for them. Like they
I
spent
mean,
a
like
lot
a
of money on
company, dude. Like, I mean,
right.
they have so much money. Like Disney buying Fox and things like that. Like
Right.
purchasing a that's fine. They're going to purchase a shit ton of stuff. But I mean, like a
Oh, yeah,
major
you mean
purchase.
like another like eating another
Yes.
corporation.
Yes.
See, I think the company that would benefit the most from taking Netflix would be Amazon
I
because
agree too.
Amazon
Their
really
platform is
doesn't
terrible.
yeah, and they don't really have like you
An
think of like
identity.
Apple TV Plus and you think of Netflix and you think of Disney Plus, there are certain shows and movies that you associate with them. Amazon Prime really doesn't have like their flagship show. And so if they were to take the Netflix stuff, they would have Stranger Things, they would have, all that back catalog of stuff that Netflix has
And
made
their
over the
platform, which
years.
Netflix has a great platform, I will
Yeah.
say, where the Prime Video, no matter where you go, I'm like, this is awful.
Yeah.
Like you can just tell that like there is some good stuff on there, but I think they do an even worse job of
Like Invincible is probably
like
one of their best things that they have on there.
yeah,
So
totally. And they've done some good stuff lately, but it's just um I agree that Amazon would be my number two choice of who I'm predicting. I don't want
yeah.
any of this to happen per se, but I think Amazon has probably the most to gain. I agree with you. I think Apple has, I guess Amazon has more money than Apple even too, right? So either one of them, and maybe it would be Amazon because you just call it Netflix Prime or whatever, and you probably keep the Netflix name. Where I don't know if Apple would keep the Netflix name, but
Because people get
um,
that confused as well. Like with like Amazon, like a lot of PR people have been getting in touch, at least in the with US critics and news outlets and things like that, saying that they want to be called Prime Video or Prime, like it's not,
It's
they don't want to
they've
be
changed
called
their name like
just
4
Amazon.
times, yeah.
Yeah, and so like again, like Amazon doesn't have like a true identity of its own. So
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, okay. Matt says Apple TV, Eric says Amazon. What do
oh,
you
I think
guys
Apple.
think?
I think either one. I'm just saying, like I I don't know who's going to do it, but I think Amazon has more to gain.
Do you
Like
genuinely
Apple,
think it will happen though? Like, do you agree with me?
yeah, I think eventually, like they're going to come into a situation where they're going to need to be bought out. I just think that they don't like to what we've been talking about is that they don't have a revenue stream except for their subscribers to fall back on. So why not, bail themselves out with a company that can spend $1 billion or so that's still chump change to them,
Oh, uh, it'll cost an insane amount, but like those
but
two
it will still
companies
be
have
nothing.
yeah,
Yeah.
those two companies have enough. They just go into their petty cash drawer and they
Like I
just
was
go
looking at Elon Musk's net worth because it was like, okay, like
yeah.
if he spent 44 or
Don't let
around
him
40,
buy Netflix.
God, he probably would think about it too. Um, if he spent around like 44 billion on
Twitter,
Twitter and like his
46.5, I think.
yeah, and then like his net worth is like over 200 and
Thought he was the
something
first
billion.
trillionaire or one of them, like,
Yeah.
wasn't he? Like, I don't know
Whereas
how much
I
is
think
the
he's also higher than Jeff Bezos and
yeah,
things
he
like
is
that.
now.
So
Yeah. And
yeah.
Bezos and Amazon is too. And Apple is up there as a company. I know Apple has a lot of just cash lying around that they haven't used to spend
They
on
just open
anything.
a door to a room and there's
Yeah,
just a
you go
room
into the
full of
Apple headquarters,
cash.
they're like, "What's that room?" They're like, "Oh, that's the money room." And it's like fucking Scrooge McDuck like jumping into the giant vault
Life
of
is
money.
like a hurricane
So that's what
here
I don't
in
know. We'll see, man. But like that it was wild following that investors meeting kind of thing and people panicking and I think their stock dropped 22% like that day or whatever. Imagine they lost almost a quarter of their value on their company. It's come back up, I think, but
yeah.
um
Well, wonder how
like
much Twitter's
yeah.
lost in the last like
I think it
few
went up
hours.
since they
Oh,
knew because like you got to think like it's still a good thing for their shareholders, right? Like he's
right.
paying a premium to buy it at $55 a share or whatever it was. And like, so that's why they think that their shareholders are going to approve it because this is the most money they'll ever get for Twitter,
Yeah.
right? Like he's just has an obscene amount of money
I don't
And
blame the people
it's
that are
just
doing it
like,
either. It's just kind of like you might as well, right? Like if you're gonna get
if
that
you're a
much money out
shareholder,
of it,
like, yeah, if you're a shareholder, like, I get why you, I mean, you don't give a fuck. And to everyone who's like, I made a couple jokes about it today too, but I'm like, is it really gonna, I don't know. Like, is it the end of the world? There's shitty billionaires that own everything we do. I'm like, is it, I don't know. Is it
no,
really
it
gonna
just kind of
change
makes
much?
almost like Twitter lamer than it already
I
is.
know, and I love Twitter. I love the platform. It's a flaming garbage truck. Um, but you can really curate your feed, and if you use the mute button and the block button, and I've met a lot of friends on Twitter. I've, I owe a lot of my career to Twitter, because of the kind of connections I've made throughout the years, and I actually genuinely like the platform quite a bit. Um, so it is kind of I do not like Elon Musk, so
No,
it is kind of shitty, but
I laughed. The one joke I thought was funny, where it's like, a guy who's having a midlife crisis has to
yeah,
involve us all now in it. So,
yeah, I know, great. Um, that's a wrap, everyone. See you on Twitter. I'm at Matt Rohrbeck. He's at EM6211. Please go check out our other stuff. We have a review up right now for The Northman, as well as The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. We also have reviews up for Everything Everywhere All at Once. We have a couple interviews for that movie. Those are doing very well, actually, for us on YouTube and on podcast services.
well,
We
our
always
review for Everything
um,
Everywhere All at Once has hit over 2,000
for
watches.
us, which is pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty good for a YouTube channel that just does podcast stuff, and we're basically
we're like the
nobody's on
Netflix
there.
of
Like,
podcasts.
yeah,
We just do one thing.
our audio, that's where people mostly consume our hashtag content. But um yeah, shout out to everyone who checked out those interviews. I had a good time doing the Daniels one, and Eric killed it with the Ki Hui Kwan and Jay Cheel. So I hope we do more of those. Those are fun. Nice little. And it seems like that's the content that does, talking about now our content. I fucking hate that word, but our content, the interview stuff. I think in those, that 10-minute, 15-minute kind of interval on YouTube. So we might have to do more with that kind of stuff, even if it's just short convos and things like that. But Eric, I hope you feel better very, very soon. I'm glad that you are feeling a little bit better from last week. Hopefully you're back to normal soon and be able to leave your home or go to a movie screening. You'll be
Yes,
good
and
for Doctor Strange next week,
yeah,
probably. Yeah.
yeah.
Luckily, it's a
I'm
slow
looking
week,
forward.
right?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of grateful that this week, like, since it's the end of April as we're recording this, which is bizarre that we're almost in May now. Um, that this is kind of a nice relaxing week, that there's not a
Hmm.
lot kind of being released. So
I'm kind of relieved because like next week is a lot, because
yeah,
I had plans to go to the Blue Jays game on May the 4th. We have the Doctor Strange premiere. We'll have to review that and get that up probably for the next morning. Either wake up really early and do that. The Toronto Maple Leafs playoffs start next week, so they're either playing on the night of the Doctor Strange screening, or maybe the other night of the my Doctor Strange tickets I have for the public show, which is a nightmare for me because I talk a lot about sports and hockey on here, but not like too much. Even on Twitter, to bring it back there, whenever I tweet about hockey, no one cares, but I have to sometimes. Everyone
I mean,
only
you talked
cares
about
about.
Mystery Alaska recently, so
Sure, but that's movie adjacent, right? Anything that's movie adjacent. Like I want to do a hockey movie podcast. Like eventually, maybe I'll get your brother Kyle to do that with me. And you guest on it because you know movies, but I needed someone who also knows hockey and sports.
right.
Um, I'll do maybe a double dose of Marching on that show that I want to do. But the Leafs playoffs, like I'm such a hardcore Leaf fan that is such a dilemma to me because I'm also love the MCU, very excited for Doctor Strange. And I'm like, if both of those things are on the same night, I am scared and I don't know what I'm gonna do.
I think one's
Um,
treated you better than the other.
I agree. I agree. Um, But
one's given you nothing.
okay, it's given me something, maybe not good things, but it's brought me emotion, maybe not great emotion, but next week's going to be a lot, but I'm glad to have that calm before the storm kind of thing. So this week is pretty chill, so I'm grateful for that.
Not only is it chill, we have Jay Cheel, the interview for
Please go
Cursed
check it
Films
out.
too. Yeah.
Please go check it out. One-stop shop for everything, Untitled_movies over on Letterboxd. You can find all of our reviews, our the podcast links, the video links, our ratings, all that stuff over there. Please go check that out. And as always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at untitledmoviepodcast.com. Family Feud Canada, not very soon, actually. I don't think my stuff starts airing until September, so I will plug that closer to then. And I already plugged my Twitter and my socials, but here it is again for Elon at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Martin. You can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
Elon Musk owns Twitter.